All right, folks, we are live again here at Pangburn. Today's topic is a very common topic. People talk about this all the time. Should we allow people to torture toys? Should we? And again, we're not assuming that they can in fact be tortured, because I know the kind of secular boobs that hang out around here. They're going to want to focus so hard on the descriptive nature of the claim, but I'm asking you for your prescriptions today. I'm going to send out some invites so people know we are playing at everyone. Should we allow people to torture toys? Boom. This is one of those topics that I think people will feel like they have it aced. Let's do our little invites here. Boom, 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 boom. That is the sound of me inviting Discord members to this discussion. Boom, boom, boom. All right. So, Robin, you said right off the bat you think you might have an answer to this. Should we allow people to torture toys? And keep in mind, think about what is a toy. What can be a toy? Some people, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what I mentioned was when I was a child, I had one cousin that's the same age as I am, and another one that's like 3 years younger than me, boy cousins, and they did torture my Barbie dolls somewhat. And I do remember also they also had a Stretch Armstrong. I don't know if you remember that toy or not.
Yeah, like it
And,
stretches out.
yes, and I do remember, and this is funny because there was a country song that came out a few years ago when it says, "I've seen what was inside of Stretch Armstrong," was in that country song, and I have because my boy cousins both had motorcycles, and they tied one arm of Stretch Armstrong to one of them's motorcycle, and they tied the other arm to the other one's motorcycle, and they drove away from each other, and they ended up ripping Stretch Armstrong in two, and I got to see the green goo or whatever that was inside of Stretch Armstrong. Um, um, so yeah, but they tortured my Barbie dolls too. So I don't know, but
Should they
like
have done that?
no, well, I mean, I don't think they should have because they were mine. They were not theirs. Like the Stretch Armstrong, I don't know. It's kind of dumb, but like the toys belonged to me. Like the Barbie dolls belong, and it was distressing
Right.
for me. So I
Right.
think that no, for my mental and social health or whatever, that no, it was a bad idea for them to be torturing my Barbie dolls.
Right.
They did. I did exact revenge on them for it though
Wait,
many
did you say
times.
trying? You mentioned that they were actually torturing your Barbie dolls. Do you think they were trying to torture them, or do you think they were actually torturing them?
No, they were just torturing me through my Barbie dolls. I guess is what
Right.
they were doing.
So that's the question. You know, are Barbie dolls capable of being tortured in the classical sense? Probably not. They don't seem to be capable of suffering. But yeah, the suffering that was inflicted upon you by way of your toy. Now, some people will think automatically that there's something more sadistic or sinister about torturing your toy Barbie as opposed to torturing your toy Rock. What do you think about that, Robin? If you had a toy Rock, do you think there's something worse about torturing your toy Rock or the toy Barbie? And let's say you feel the same about uh, both toys.
Well, I mean, I think like they could probably not destroy my rock, my pet rock, but like my Barbie dolls, once they, if they destroyed them, then I couldn't play with them anymore. So like
Right.
it was a loss of something. I will say though that both of these guys turned out to be Trump supporters. So yeah.
You gotta every chance you can throw that uppercut, you gotta throw it, right?
Just I don't know if there's any connection. There's just correlation, I guess. Correlation's all I'm blaming.
Right. So some interesting reading today. So there is not strong evidence that trying to torture toys by itself causes people to become cruel towards conscious beings. The evidence is much weaker than many people assume. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because I think a lot of knee-jerk answers to this question are going to want to go there. They're going to say, well, we shouldn't allow people to do this because, by virtue of doing this, it's going to create more, violence in the world, or violent offenders towards other human beings or other animals. So research has found that some children who later exhibit aggressive or antisocial behavior may also engage in unusually violent play. However, this does not show that violent play caused the aggression. It could be that an already aggressive child is drawn to aggressive play. A child experiencing stress, trauma, or emotional difficulties expresses those feelings through play. The play is merely a symptom rather than a cause. There's also this other point. Most violent play appears harmless. Children routinely blow up toy soldiers. Like, look at Sid in the YouTube thumbnail here. He's about to blow me up. Decapitate action figures, have dinosaurs eat dolls, destroy Lego cities. There is little evidence that these activities in themselves produce sadistic adults. If they did, we'd expect a huge proportion of adults to become violent, which clearly does not happen. And the strongest concern from an academic perspective is not the toy, but the motivation. So psychologists tend to be more concerned when a person derives pleasure from the idea of suffering itself, shows cruelty toward actual animals, lacks empathy for conscious creatures, exhibits persistent sadistic tendencies across contexts. So these factors have much stronger empirical links to harmful behavior than what someone does with an inanimate object. And then something I was curious about is I wanted to know about animal cruelty and what this has to say about it, right? So animal cruelty itself is a well-established warning sign for later antisocial or violent behavior. Deliberately harming animals is taken seriously in psychology and criminology because it involves a conscious victim capable of suffering. Violent play with toys, by contrast, has not been shown to reliably predict later animal cruelty. Most children engage in some form of aggressive fantasy play without developing cruel tendencies toward animals or people. The strongest concern would be if the toy behavior is part of a broader pattern. For example, if someone frequently fantasizes about causing suffering, takes pleasure in others' pain, shows low empathy, and also begins mistreating animals, then the toy behavior may be one symptom among many, but the toy behavior itself is not generally regarded as a causal factor. So, and something to consider today is what can be made a toy, right? It's hard to really imagine something that that couldn't be made a toy. So for me, it kind of depends on which toy. And some things to think about it, also when we go through wrestle with this question today is, do you want to live in a world where it's completely acceptable for children to be going around with knives, being very responsible, but because they're only stabbing stones with them, but they're like violently stabbing stones. Does anyone have a problem with that? But yeah, the general question today is: should we allow people to torture toys? Any opinions,
Travis has
CJ?
genuinely lost it.
No.
I
Are you
just got
trying to
done
avoid
working
answering? Are
for.
you trying to avoid answering the question? No, I'm kidding. Yeah,
No, no, I just got done working for 12 hours. So sorry for being sarcastic.
that's all right.
I
Um,
think
it's a funny topic. I mean, I understand why you would be concerned, but like, I also think that there's a healthy amount of. Well, we've seen it in other categories. I'm pretty sure with. I'm not going to go there, but in other categories, it's shown that people that take out that can use these toys as a what do you call it? There's this very surrogate for other activities for real life stuff. Um,
Right, like a
it can
punching
help.
bag.
Yeah, like I don't think that we should be shaming it, but like it is something that we could. It's kind of like missions, right? They play
Yeah,
with dead bodies all day, and it's okay because it's productive to society. But there's some people that play with dead bodies that were like, you should go to jail. You know?
right. So if you had a child, CJ, and you see your child taking a pencil or a pen and stabbing Barbie repeatedly, saying, "Die, die, kill, 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 die, 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 kill, kill, kill." Do you think you would have some kind of impulse to want to correct that behavior? And if it's if it is benign, like you kind of seem to be suggesting, well, why would you intervene on that play?
Sure, I would want to intervene on it, but I wouldn't. Like I was saying, kids torturing toys. It seems like either it could either be innocent, or it could be like a surrogate for some actual hatred they have, and the toy is the only thing that's weak enough that they can beat up, or maybe the only thing they can get away with beating up. So you'd probably have to target some sort of underlying thing. I don't think telling them, and I'm not suggesting that you're suggesting that. I don't think telling them that you're not allowed to do that to a toy, and then you stop there. It's going to stop whatever is actually welling up inside them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I guess the I think most parents, if they saw their child doing that to a Barbie doll, or like a Mario doll or whatever, kill, 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 die, 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 and just like they're like kind of obsessed with doing that, they're probably going to want to be like, I think there are better ways to treat our toys. And then the interesting question is, why are we stopping them from doing that when the evidence shows that like this isn't demonstrated to carry over into more brutal or violent behavior by them in the future, just by doing this to toys. And
Not necessarily,
yeah,
but I've also seen studies. Raid room. You know what I'm talking about? Where people go in a room and they break stuff.
oh yeah, yeah,
So there was a study I saw on those, and basically, like they were testing people's frustration levels before and after. Like
yeah,
people that were in raid rooms that weren't in raid rooms and were doing some other activity, and they found out that people that did the raid rooms were like more tendent had a higher tendency to to feel more violent or to feel more angry in the future than the people that didn't. So I do think that there's a certain level of it's kind of like not keeping yourself stoic, allowing yourself to take out that rage in an unhealthy way can sometimes backfire and make you I don't think it's going to make you a bad, evil, violent person, but it's not always necessarily a healthy way to get rid of it. So what I would
right.
say is, of course, you tell your kid, hey, stop beating up your toys, or I'm not getting you fucking toys because you're breaking your damn toys.
Well,
But
that's that.
also, there's
Yeah,
some underlying thing that you can try to like. Maybe let's get them into sports. Maybe let's get them into karate or meditation, something like that. I went into Yale
yeah.
Marines and karate as a kid. and that helps a
So
lot.
so yeah, and then I think I think the easier question is, well, the easier part is like, I don't want my kid to be breaking their toys. I'm not going to get them any toys. But the more difficult question is, why, if we think this behavior is benign, and for the most part it does seem to be benign based on what's available academically, why are we going to try to steer them into what we consider to be more productive or more well-behaved ways of being? There's something to consider here in like how that behavior makes us feel as observers, as parents. Of whether they're your teens, whether it's your 40-year-old son, right, doing that to one of his toys. Your 40-year-old son is out there with his Batman doll, hacking at it with a machete, um, and chopping it into pieces and screaming "die" at it. Is this going to cause you concern? Most people would be concerned if they saw their 40-year-old son or daughter doing that, right? And
This might be a
why?
slightly
Yeah, yeah.
it might be a slightly broader argument here, but I think the reason why is because we're social creatures that live in a society, and it seems to me that if I see someone that's destroying their own private property, that has so little regard for it that they just want to destroy and smash it, I would think that they have even less regard for public property and are like, we want to raise people in the world that not only take care of their own stuff, that don't let their own stuff fall into decay and allow their, you know, uh, money just never become generational wealth, but also we want society as a whole to be, we want people to treat society well so that we don't have to put extra money into society to fix the things that people keep neglecting.
Yeah, like I get that generally, but I don't think the bat, like hacking at the little old Batman toy with a machete, necessarily leads to not treating society well.
Not
I think,
necessarily. I agree. I
yeah,
agree 100%. Not necessarily, but
yeah.
I don't think it's a slippery slope to say that you know a society that allows its kids to just destroy their own private property uh, might also be likely to disregard the sanctity of public property.
Mm. What do you think, Simos? I'm curious to get your thoughts on the question.
Yeah, I think generally it definitely shouldn't be illegalized or anything. We want to know if people are beginning to develop, or especially kids, are beginning to develop some kind of psychosis which towards violence. So no, you should be allowed to torture Barbies and things like that in order to, demonstrate your character, which is what's important in raising children.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it's like that. And plus, they used to say back in my day, kids, let me just tell you kids something a second. Back in my day, they said that the video was going to be a bad thing for society because of
Right,
the horror
right,
films.
right. The
And that
horror
we were
film.
all going to be affected, and we
Yeah,
were all going to be Satanists, and we were
yeah.
all going to, that was the end of
And
civilization.
the video
And
games came along, and then of course we're all going to be
even
violent because
worse
of the
with the video
violent
game.
video game. Mortal
Yeah,
Kombat,
like
fatalities.
Wolfenstein.
Well, everyone's going to want to go out there and freeze someone into a block of ice and then punch them, and then they're going to blow up, and that's what everyone's going to want to do. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Wolfenstein was the big game when I was a teenager.
Wolfenstein.
And yeah, that was obviously, right, everyone's going to want to be a Nazi. Turned out not to be so far from the truth, but that's
Yeah,
besides the point. Right?
everyone's gonna play the Nazi killing game and want to become a Nazi.
Yeah, it turns out that is a thing because I play Hell Let Loose.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's so I guess the question would be, in like a common area. Let's say you're living in a condo building and there's a common area, and there was a guy down there, um, torturing a baby doll. Um,
Mhm.
a very lifelike looking baby doll, cutting its limbs off and laughing maniacally about it, and doing all kinds of. This is a toy. It's a very lifelike toy. Should that person not be allowed to do that kind of thing in the common area? Do you think that would be a reasonable thing for the strata, let's say, to set up a rule against that kind of behavior like that could be disturbing to others? And would that create too big of a slippery slope?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you give me enough to chew on there, so there's no
Yeah.
worries. But I'm going to keep it quite simple, right? If that behaviour is engaging in hate speech or some kind of detrimental speech for the public to hear, then yeah, I think that there should be some curbs on it, but not for the fact that they're torturing the child, the toy. It's
Right.
for the fact that
Yeah.
their behaviour in society is,
Right.
unlawful.
So and that
If it's
actually
unlawful,
is
or if
included.
it's just
Yeah.
antisocial,
Yeah.
then
That's
yeah, have a
what.
word and say, look, this is an antisocial behaviour.
Yeah.
My child's here. He's only 8 years
Yeah.
old, and he doesn't need to see people torturing dolls,
Right.
right? Or
So
hearing about it, or hearing about your mental anguish, right? More
exactly.
importantly.
Yep, for sure. And that's part of today's question. Like when we ask the question, should we allow people to torture toys? We should consider, like, again, like in a busy sidewalk where there are children around walking with their families, maybe just outside the limits of where the park is. If a guy decides to pull up with his, life-like baby dolls and is, stabbing them with a hunting knife and things like that while looking around at people enjoying the day, should this person be allowed to be doing that? That's part of the question. Should today, when we're asking, should we allow people to torture toys? We can get into some really, really difficult areas where I think we're going to get into like the idea of like, well, yeah, I think there's laws in most countries to do with lewd and seditious behavior. I think a lot of laws are probably going to cover things like that. But the question would be then, what level of torture is this individual who's outside the park where there's families walking around? What level of torture would be acceptable with that lifelike baby doll that he has? Is he allowed? Is he allowed? Is he allowed to punch it in the head? Well, remember CJ, we're talking about like there's like the trying to torture toys, and then there's the torturing toys itself.
I get what you're saying by torture.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry for saying it's not torture, but like I don't. Every time you come up with an example, and I'm not saying that you're, wrong for it, but every time you come up with an example of a thing that someone might reasonably say, hey, that person should stop, and maybe even stop by force of law. It's not merely torturing a toy. It's, oh, I'm bringing a kid toy to the park and I'm stabbing. Like that's almost a terroristic threat.
Yeah, but if they weren't torturing the toy, there wouldn't be a problem. So we're talking about torturing toys.
But merely torturing the toy isn't the problem. It's the
that's fine.
It's the context.
The consequence. The consequences of torturing the toy, right?
I don't think there's any situation of an adult where they merely torture a toy that I would be like, oh, the police need to be involved. Like,
well, what about
I don't even think that mental health should be involved at that point. It's just kind of like a personal thing.
Well, what about these child-sized sex dolls that pedophiles are buying as sex toys? Should there be limitations on these things? Are they doing it in their home? I mean, yeah, they're doing it in their home, but
okay, I don't care.
We can get into the conversation of whether these things should be being manufactured at all, and if people are buying these things, it probably is it's probably worthwhile to be providing them with some kind of social service that would include, having this documented. I think it could be of use. Yeah, go ahead, Casey.
Is there evidence that one leads to worse actions?
No. So that's what we started off with today. There's no evidence that torturing toys in and of itself, like if you have a child that's torturing toys, there's no evidence. It's not academically accepted that leads to higher chances of a child wanting to torture or harm or be violent towards other human beings or other animals. Although torturing of toys can be a sign of violent nature, but it doesn't. But what hasn't been demonstrated, so it's a signifier, but it hasn't been demonstrated that the more you allow your child to keep torturing a toy, that means they're going to have a higher predisposition to want to harm other conscious creatures or other animals, whatnot. So yeah, and then the question is today, under what circumstances would you? This is another way to look at the question. Under what circumstances would you want to disallow someone's freedom to, try to torture toys? And I'm saying try because a lot of people understand what the question is. I don't think there's anyone here that believes, even though I'm going to pull up the probability of that just to be an analytical dick later of the probability of a Barbie.
I think you could perfectly reasonable that Barbie's going to feel something.
There's a high probability. I think 1 in 10 to the power of a Googleplex that
that's me.
They could
that's
feel
me.
it. Yeah. That's me. That was that one Barbie that time. Yeah. So yeah, there is no, and these are good questions. There based on my studying, there's no good evidence to suggest that an adult or a child torturing toys necessarily means that they're going to have a higher chance of doing that towards other human beings. But it could be a sign that they have violent streaks in them, or that they're more capable of violence maybe than other people. So yeah.
One of the things
I honestly wouldn't care.
One of the things about playing with toys is that we imagine the world and we create a fantasized world in our heads specifically for that toy. So there's something genuinely more interesting than just saying torture a toy just means to do some physical action against the toy. It means to do it in that fantasized world as well. Right? If we're engaging with the argument sensibly, right? If they're not engaging in trying some toy play, then they're not engaging in toy play, and it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. It's just some atoms that they're messing around with. Right, but if they're genuinely engaging in trying to put that character, right, because we're specifically talking about Barbie or Action Man or whatever like that, if they're genuinely trying to create a fantasy world for that character to evolve in, then there's some serious problems. Maybe they've got a god complex, and by the sound, if they're torturing people, it's probably Christianity.
Yeah, go ahead, Driftwood.
Yeah. What about the hypothetical of like a perfectly lifelike sex robot, male or female, and somebody hitting it out on the street or in public? Because that would be a toy, and then hitting that would be torturing it. I personally don't think that if people are viewing it and they don't want to view it, I don't think it would be appropriate personally, but I would be interested in what other people would have to.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see what the laws, lewd and seditious acts in one way or another tend to be included in most, at least first world legal systems, where that kind of stuff could be viewed as lewd and seditious acts. So imagine this situation where the police are called because someone sees in the distance it looks like there's a man like beating let's say a woman in someone in woman's clothes in the distance, and then the police are called. They get down there, they rush down there, and this guy's beating the crap out of a mannequin, his toy, and they're like, my question would be, would they have good grounds to threaten him with a charge if he continues doing that? Are they just going to tell him to take it home, take it inside? Yeah, but I think, like, just like I gave the more hardcore example, if someone had and some of you weren't here for it, but if someone had a very lifelike looking baby doll and they started stabbing it and cutting off its limbs and stuff around a park, you're gonna, like, I would feel it necessary to call the police. I would be calling the police and I'd be telling them what's going on, and I would want to know what's going to be done about it. But I'm curious right now, in Canada, if someone is
I looked it up in the U.S. Like, displaying sex toys in public is a crime in most places in the U.S. It's like lewdness, lasciviousness.
Yeah. So yeah, but that's the. Let's imagine it's just a mannequin, like the person's toy mannequin, not a sex toy. Because I think sex toys are in Canada. If someone is torturing a baby doll by a park,
you could probably get like public. I don't know if they have it. It's like disorderly. I don't know if they have that in Canada. In the U.S., they have disorderly, and disorderly is basically like, you're not committing a crime, but you're being really fucking annoying. So we're just gonna attack you with this. It usually gets thrown out, but like,
yeah,
you can put disorderly on most people that are just causing chaos.
I want to hand the mic to Casey. Casey, go ahead. You were saying something?
Oh, no, I'm curious to hear what your thing's gonna pull
up,
yeah, because I was picturing like an adult mannequin. I feel like that would constitute a level of free speech, potentially protest. Like, there's context where I could see it. Yeah,
exactly.
Well,
yep.
Can I throw in something?
Oh yeah, Brett, go ahead, and then I'll once Brett goes, and maybe if anyone else has something to throw in, then I'll do some reading from Canada here.
Well, unless it was fictional, which it absolutely could have been. In the movie The Patriot, they were burning figures of King George, to protest, the English rule. So the question then is like, okay, so can that still be done in public? Like, could you, burn whatever figure, right? And obviously we're talking about dolls and stuff like that, or toys. And then could you, I know what you're going to say, Robin. And then...
No, I was going to say an effigy. An effigy is what we call it. Like that's what, yeah.
Okay. But then it's like, okay, but then like, if it went from burning it to punching it actively, like you said, Trav, if it looked like a person kind of thing, like where's that distinction? Can a person actually practice like martial arts in the park? Like, at what point would a person say like, hey, they were practicing Tai Chi versus like they were actively doing these moves way too close to other people and active aggressively to where they're, arrested for harassment kind of thing, right? So where are those fine lines? I don't know where they are, but I'm just trying to bring up those examples. I'll stop there.
Yeah. No, those are excellent examples. So here's the so in Canada, a baby doll is property, not a person, obviously. Since a doll cannot suffer and has no legal rights, there is no criminal offense of cruelty to a doll. However, a person could potentially be charged for related conduct depending on the circumstances. Mischief if they damage someone else's property. So we can rule that out because in this situation, this hypothetical, they're not damaging someone else's property. Causing a disturbance if they're creating a public disturbance. Okay, so that would be causing a disturbance. Uttering threats if they're making threats towards real people while doing it. Let's just say in this hypothetical, they're just threatening the doll. They're just like, ha, you're dying. I love this. Indecent acts or other public order offenses in unusual circumstances. Okay. Indecent, they could get hit on indecent acts. I would be really curious to see what the what the precedent is like on indecent acts with regards to things like this in Canada. Mental health intervention if the behavior suggests an acute psychiatric crisis and the legal requirements are met. I mean, this is something where, in this hypothetical, I'm imagining someone who is otherwise of sound mind. They just have this one thing they like to do out in public. So, for example, a man sitting in a park stabbing his own baby doll with a pen while saying, "I hate Batman," is likely to have committed a crime. Is unlikely to have committed a crime. A man sitting in a park stabbing a baby doll while yelling, "This is what I'm going to do to my neighbor's child," could attract police attention, of course. So that's the easier case, though. But if he's doing this, if he's stabbing the baby doll and saying, "I like this, I like doing this, this is my favorite hobby," right? He's not threatening the neighbor's child or anyone else's child, but he is still, this could be considered mischief. This could be considered causing a disturbance, of course, indecent acts. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the big question of today is like, where do you want to put these limits on where or when people are allowed to torture their toys, and are there any kinds of toys, like we brought up, I think is a horrible, disgusting thing that has emerged in these child size body sex toys that exist, and people are allowed to sell these, manufacture these, and buy these. That's the dark side of this conversation. And should they be able to do what they want with those things? And then some people are saying, well, if it's in the confines of their own home, then some people will wash their hands of it and not care about the behavior. But some people will lean more into like,
it's none of my business.
Well, yeah, I mean, as we can get into issues if the purchasing and usage of some toys should be of public interest and should be of public business. I mean, I think firearms are. So, and we do get into the conversation about firearms. I think people in the United States, for example, too often treat their firearms like toys. So, if we're going to say, you're breaking up, CJ. Yeah, go ahead, Robin.
I looked up just for Casey. I looked up Benson there. In the United States, the burning of an effigy, is not illegal because it's protected under First Amendment. However, you can face charges for, like, if it's a fire safety concern, if you are using it in connection with incitement or threats,
right?
If you are causing a public disturbance, and if you are burning someone else's property or burning materials that are toxic.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, like effigies are legal to burn.
So, and then another question, then I'll open it up some more for some more comments and questions and whatnot. If something to think about, like if you saw, and we kind of talked about this earlier, but I think it's one of the more interesting questions. If you saw your child, with their doll, right, and they're taking some kind of sharp object they found, sticks or whatever, and they're just like frequently stabbing and saying die, die, kill, 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 die, die, die to the baby doll, I think it's clear based on the academic goods that, again, just because there's more people who join the room, that this doesn't mean that this kind of behavior is going to, if they continue it, is necessarily going to lead to them having a higher chance of being violent towards other humans or being violent towards other animals. And yet, I think many parents are going to find it to be a good thing to steer them away from that behavior. Some people might say, because I don't want them ruining their toys, right? That's one reason. But for the people who do it for reasons of it kind of disturbs them to see their child engaging in that kind of behavior, just because it disturbs you, do you think that's a strong enough justification to not want your child to be doing that kind of thing? So something to consider there as well.
I can say something on the anxiety thing. Like, when it comes to someone in a park, or just say any public place doing any weird thing, but of course in this case specifically portraying toys or whatever, it's kind of like the thing where we want to live in a society where people aren't on edge all the time because Joe's out in the park again being weird with dolls. He's never hurt anyone, but it's weird. Like, I think there is a certain part of society where we want to discourage that kind of behavior, even if it's not physically harmful. It's, we want to reduce the mental harm, the stress. It's kind of like people talking about they don't take public transport because there's people on public transport harassing other people, which is extremely unfortunate. But like as a society, in order to function, I do think that we have to discourage certain activities, even if like they are realistically mundane. I don't like the idea of punishing people because they created social anxiety for a lot of reasons. I do think that there's certain levels where we can at least, have some sort of police intervention, even if it's not an arrest.
Yeah. I think Casey asks, was it Casey? Oh no, sorry. It was Brett. Your child goes to a friend's house and one of the siblings of their friend is doing this, being very violent, kill, death, kill towards the baby doll they're playing with. Are you letting them go back to that house? Is that going to be somewhat of a deterrent for you to want to send to their house? And everyone, feel free to unmute and just answer the questions and get into the conversation today when you have something to say.
Brett's got a good point. I wouldn't want my kid going back to the house, and I wouldn't want my kid going back to the park, which is why we should probably remove those people from the park. But we can't remove people from their houses.
Right.
It is the context of. All right, Trav, go ahead.
No, Brett. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, okay. I want to hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scenario setting. If it's a person living by themselves in a house, and the neighbors can't hear the horrific whatever and stuff like that, right? Like then,
yeah,
I guess is what it is. But the context of the scenario I brought up, oh hell no, that my kid's not going back there, and
right,
and I even for peace of mind, I would probably, I don't know if I'd go meet him in person. I think a phone call would be too, I don't know about informal, but I might go talk to the parents and say, listen, I don't know if you're aware of this behavior, but
right,
you're the reason why I'm not okay with my child coming back. I want my child and your child to be friends, but your other child really has some behavior that I'm a little concerned about this violent tendencies. It's one thing to play a video game and, I'm going to kill you, like if you're talking to Scorpion or Sub-Zero or whatever.
Yeah.
This other action just feels a lot more, something about it, especially if it's a boy killing like Barbie and like, violence towards women. Like that might not be literal, but I would be disturbed by that.
So Brett, you just opened a fantastic layer that I was hoping to get into. And the difference being like, what is the actual difference? And this is where we're going to start getting into the aesthetic argument, like the disgust factor that is caused within us. There seems to be something, at least to some people, that is more benign about, your children playing Super Smash Bros. Together and one child's just beating the crap out of the other within the game of Super Smash Bros. Or Mortal Kombat or something like that, and then they're like die, 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 and then they do their finishing move, the fatality in Mortal Kombat, or they do the final like kick knockout. You're dead, I win. Or they're playing GoldenEye 007. Man, am I dating myself? But yeah, just all of these different violent things in video games. I think for me, they don't seem as bad aesthetically in how they affect me as a child who is like trying to like bash the head to death of a baby doll, right? And compared to someone getting completely ripped apart and their guts going flying everywhere in Mortal Kombat, right? When they're playing in a video game. Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
Sorry, I know I just went, but yeah, like you expect that to happen, and you have a frame of reference, and there is a very like no one plays Call of Duty being like, let's go start world peace, right? You definitely lose.
Oh, we lost Brett. Shit. We lost Brett. We will get Brett back. Does anyone else hear Brett, or is he Disneyland at
he's
the moment?
frozen.
No, God got him.
God electrified his beautiful red head. Perry, since you unmuted here, since you were forced to unmute here, lay it out, and then we should go to Anka next.
So what's the topic exactly? Should we be allowed to torture toys?
The topic is, should we allow people to torture toys, or you can take it as, should we allow people to try to torture toys? Yeah, either or.
So it sounds like this would be I think the conversation has been mostly in like a legal sense, bringing up what the case is in America and Canada.
I would say that's some of it, but we've been talking a lot about how people are going to feel about just in their own home seeing a child do this, or if your 40-year-old son who's living at home is taking toys out to the wood chopping block and chopping their heads off.
So my answer, would be different depending if it's legal or the moral side of it. When I was in middle school, me and my best friend came across someone who was a year below us, and we saw him cut a dead squirrel with a hatchet. It was a dead squirrel. He had it laid out, and he hacked at it.
Yeah.
And that kind of gave me, maybe one of my first real-world experiences with what some people may consider antisocial tendencies. And so that made me aesthetically feel bad. Now, we talked about pedophilia and like the baby doll and whatnot. Another thing that, of course, makes me feel bad. However, I hesitate being charitable to the pedophile, but there are likely healthy ways for people who are genetically predisposed to pedophilia, may I add, to get those urges out in a safe way that doesn't harm actual people. Now, whether that's taking a baby doll and doing sexual things with it or not, I don't know. I would, again, hesitate to make that claim. But I'm simply bringing up the positive side, the healing side that could come about from quote unquote torturing or interacting with inanimate objects in such a way. Now, the legal side, we brought up kind of like the balance between free speech and not disrupting the public. You can do anything to disrupt the public. And so if you're getting a lot of noise complaints from doing jumping jacks with your bikini on at the park, then I imagine that some legal action would be had to take there. So if I had to give a yes or no without like nuancing my answer, well, I'm not a panpsychist, so I don't think toys can be tortured. But I think the impact, if done in public, the impact would have a net negative well-being on other people from the aesthetic side of things. I'll stop there. I'm kind of rambling, but
yeah, no, that's good. I think on the surface,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I have a maxim. It's better to, and I've said this for a while. It's better to anthropomorphize objects than it is to objectify humans.
Yeah.
So I like to treat inanimate objects as if we live in a panpsychist world. I like to treat my car with respect, my apartment with respect, all of these things, because that sort of habit leads to a better eudaimonia.
Yeah, I know that's your maxim. That's why I was anticipating you were going to drop pretty heavily on the side of protecting the dolls from this kind of behavior. But yeah,
I am on that side.
Okay. Yep.
But I care about the humans' impact,
Yeah.
First and foremost. So.
Yep.
Well, fuck the doll. Well, not literally, but I guess I wouldn't be against you doing that.
So yeah, does anyone else have anything to add? Any initial thoughts about the question?
I think
let's go, Anka. Yeah.
I think it would be interesting, for example, if we say that it's okay to torture dolls or toys because they're inanimate objects and, people can do whatever they want. But at the same time, I think that as time progresses and some people can actually develop feelings for these toys and set some kind of standards of what they expect people to how to treat those toys, similar to like how we treat other objects that we have. And so even if we say that it is okay now, it might not become okay in the future because it will affect how other people feel. Like if I say I have a doll, somebody has like a child doll, right? Because they don't have a kid. So they have a child doll that fills them with emotion. But I have this child doll because I want to abuse it. That will make them have an emotional distress, obviously because they have a different connection with that doll or a toy.
Yes. Yep. Sorry, I just got to give my baby a kiss goodnight.
Like the guy who fell in love with his car, Anka, something like that.
I think that the closer it is to like a human or a living thing, it might have more of a effect on how society views it. But I guess if they are designated specifically for that, like there are these mannequins that are made for, kicking and shooting, and like they're made to like explode and stuff. So of course, that's different than say like a baby doll that you get. So I think the initial purpose, the recognition of the initial purpose is important. Or
I mean, yeah. Sorry, Anka, you bring up a really good point about like the test dummies for like shooting weapons and things like that. Would people have a problem with those test dummies now coming in the form of little babies? I would. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, anyone can make whatever they want for fun, right? With like making a mold, 3D printed, and just see who buys.
It would probably be a good idea to have a few baby test dummies to see how a baby would react if it's like a car crash test dummy or something. But if they're like universally changing it to babies, then yeah, of course, I probably have an issue with that.
Yeah, Perry, I was specifically talking about ammo testing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Let it rip. Who cares? No, I'm kidding.
I think you guys know my opinion.
Yeah, CJ doesn't care. No, I'm kidding.
CJ needs a bigger target to shoot because his aim sucks either way.
Hey, watch it.
Yeah, Robin, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, I was laughing at that. That's funny. Yeah, better aim, CJ. Better aim. Like I said, I go my boy cousins, like I said, and I will bring this up again. Who eventually did turn out to be Trump supporters, did torture my Murphys, and but they did it. I don't think they're still good men, actually, even though they are Trump supporters.
Right.
They are good men. They're good fathers. They're they've been responsible members of society, and they just have bad politics. But they did it more to harass me than it was for the fun of torturing the dolls. I think, though, it was just something to do to me that they actually wouldn't get us probably a whipping for by my grandma or whoever was watching over us. So. Yeah. So it was kind of like hard on my like it was something that was like a strain on my mental health, somewhat.
Yeah.
It was aggravating. I didn't see it as anything weird. I was more concerned about them like taking all their clothes off than I was them torturing them. Actually, they were always, for a long time that bothered me. But
yeah, and what if we can talk about if someone's toy is their chia pet? The chia pet being the thing that's actually its hair grows because its hair is grass. What if the person's torturing the living organism? Does that bother anyone more than some of these other crude examples?
That's a really good question. I've created a connection with my plants over here where I feel negatively sometimes when I see them wither away, and I get anxiety if I haven't watered them and past when they're supposed to be watered. Would I feel different? Oh man, that's a good one.
If you attach like googly eyes to the leaves.
Not even. Like, I'm just thinking of a plant or like a family of plants, and I'm torturing them by not giving them any water. Would that make me feel worse than the baby child doll being sexually or just stabbed, assaulted, or tortured? Oh, man. I think I would still feel worse with the baby doll. I think I could possibly do like a whole deep meditation of moral calculus to convince myself that the plants would actually be worse, but maybe if it was something other than a baby doll also. So I don't know. It's a good one. It's a good question.
I'd be abusing the shit out of plants, bro.
Yeah, and that's why I told you that your aim is shit, because you make fun of my plants, I make fun of your aim.
What about this?
I don't make fun of them. They just get in my way.
What about this? If you're only watering the plants every 5 days, you're only watering them a small amount, so they were going to still die.
Right.
But you were
right.
prolonging the life that they would actually last for before they died.
Well, you know what I thought of, Simos? Like,
what's that?
what if you leave the Barbie doll like under the bed for like 10 years? That seems like kind of like a thing of torture. It's not intentional, of course, unless you did intend to do it, but Yeah, I think the
Somebody put it there for a reason.
The daily practice of like stabbing or having sexual behavior to the baby doll would still trump the leaving the plants on life support just to leave them alive for as long as possible.
Is this just from like a personal well-being thing where like you wouldn't want people doing this because it would show that there's something that they're not being stoic or whatever, they're not being I guess good people on the inside?
I think that I had a conversation with T-Dog and T-Dog. I said, do I really need to specify, like, it's almost for sure, like, it's almost certainly, like, you guys know that I'm a fallibilist. Do I really need to specify it every time? And T-Dog gave me the answer. We should be practicing and creating a habit out of these things that we find virtuous, either epistemically or ethically. And I think your relationship with inanimate objects or plants indicates, the habits that you have towards those things indicates how virtuous you are. You play the way that you practice. So if you're practicing dog shit epistemology or virtue ethics with certain things, then you're probably going to play that way as well. So that would be my kind of response to that as to why we should it's a habit. Create a habit. Create good habits.
I get that. Yeah, I said something pretty similar at the beginning of this, just a lot less eloquently.
I'd like to bring in Bipedal Ape. It looks like you had something to say.
Yeah, I was teetering with it, but I'm not trying to cut anybody off. I came in late. I think I'm getting the scoop of the conversation. But someone kind of already just said what was on the tip of my tongue in some senses, which is, I think, one of the most disturbing parts, or I think one of the most fundamentally important parts, at least in my mind, to this conversation as it relates to like moral tolerance or how we're kind of picking apart, how we feel about this thing, inanimate object versus plant. I mean, at the end of the day, like someone also said, you could give some kind of rationalization of the plant. You could give some kind of rationalization for the doll and the kind of human-centric features and social similarities that possess. But I think either way, what is at the crossroads of either of those rationalizations of comparison, we're still left with the fact that this is still a behavior that has social implications to some extent. Right, yes. Because we're a social species. We rely on social collaboration at every level, and because of that, we're at the behest of our peers' mental states around us, and what is permissible or normalized behavior and what is not, and that's why we give consequences or praise depending on what the ramifications of that behavior are or what they exhibit. And so, in this instance, I think we can all agree, regardless of whatever epistemological view, the underlying factor is there is a behavior, whether it's the inanimate object or whether it's the plant, that is being exhibited by the individual taking the action. And it's not even really about the plant or the inanimate object. It's about how we feel about it and the implications of how we feel about it relative to having to collaborate with this other human who's doing it.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Bipedal Ape. I'd like to get, and then we'll go to Anka. But Perry, how do you respond to that? Because I think it might be a little bit counter to your position in that you do put some emphasis on, some protection on the object itself. In that the object itself should be protected, not just as a means to an end, but an end in and of itself.
For the reason of practicing the way you play, yes, but it still remains secondary to, and I completely agree with what Ape said there, the social implications in how it makes other people aesthetically feel. If I were on an island by myself and I had Wilson, right?
Yeah. Are you going to do things to Wilson? Is that what you're telling me?
And let's take the monkey and we can teach him sign language to talk about what you guys did. Oh, no. Let's not bring the monkey. I primary lens the social implications because I'm a moral well-beingist, and I know from my own anecdotal experience, which I said earlier, when I saw this kid, me and my best friend saw this guy hatchet a dead squirrel in half.
Yeah.
And so that kind of grounded a lot of disgust for that sort of thing. But I do secondarily, as an end in itself, treat objects as if they were human-centric or anthropomorphic. I anthropomorphize them. But that's just that's a secondary tool on the tool belt after the social implications are met first.
Right. Anka?
Yeah, I actually want to echo also what Bipedal Ape said when he said that at the end of the day, it's about the social implication. And I think it kind of speaks to the case of you know it when you see it kind of thing, where, for example, like if we take a bonsai tree that you essentially have to torture a plant in order to get it to the aesthetic that you want to see, we can accept it socially, and we know that like plants like bougainvillea, in order for them to flower a certain way, you have to deprive them of water, you have to prune them, you have to basically torture the plant, and we are totally fine with it because of the aesthetics of it. But then if we see someone like what Perry was saying with the dead squirrel, which is essentially inanimate at this point, being tortured, which is also not a correct word for it, but you know it when you see it. You know that some moral standard or some kind of social moral value has been crossed, or line has been crossed, and it's not something that anyone can specifically say, but it's kind of one of those things where you know it when you see it.
Yeah, and we're getting down to why we have judges and juries, right? And why we have things on the books, laws on the books that are not are pretty general. Like mischief is a pretty general law. What does mischief looks like? Well, you kind of know it when you see it.
Yeah, what is obscenity, you know?
Yeah, causing a disturbance. What is enough of a causing a disturbance to take someone in for questioning or to book somebody, versus other different causing of disturbances. Indecent acts. Some people are going to say, some pride parades break all of these rules by my, through my lens. And then another person's going to say, no, you did. I think you're just saying that because you don't want to support gay people. So it's my critique, I guess, would be to this idea. You know it when you see it. It depends, and it depends on the people judging it. Some people, I think it would be pretty universal to see like the person stabbing the baby doll in the park. I think that's a pretty universal one where most people would be disturbed in seeing that, and they would want to report it or get away from that behavior. So yeah, I mean, to Bipedal Ape's point, when what are we worried about in that situation? Well, first of all, when we first see it, you might have a fight or flight response because you think it might be a living baby, right? If you're at a certain distance and you see, you're like, what the fuck is that? Like, and then you realize, oh, okay, it's a doll. So then we go into this more like secondary concern than what was the primary concern of, is this person murdering a baby? So yeah, like
it's a visceral reaction.
Yeah. And Travis, I was going to say, this is why I love that you brought up our judicial system, because this is actually a perfect way to drive that home. Because kind of what I was alluding to, it is like intentionality, right? We take these things in context. There's the context of the circumstance, there's the intentionality that's involved, there's the consequences of the intentionality, right? Two acts can be exactly the same, both in their action and their consequence, and yet the only thing that's different is the intention of the individual who is acting it out, and yet we will judge it completely differently.
Of course.
And so like that social exchange is constantly already happening. And to that point, this is the same reason why there's such a spectrum on humor, right? Like what is funny and what is not funny. It is going to be contingent on so many things at that given moment in which the person who's experiencing the humor, right? Like maybe there's somebody, the joke is about, I don't know, like racism is a very hot topic one, but it's also pretty pervasive in humor, particularly like in US humor, right? This is one of those things where, you know, you could have experienced racism today. And so maybe you would have found Chris Tucker funny yesterday, but today you're a bit more acutely aware of the offense or potential worry of the normalization of the humor that's being prevailed here. And it's not just because, it's not like there's a fluidity that's kind of to that, both in our mental states, but in our peers, in the location, what events maybe would have happened before. All of these kind of things. Like I'll give another example, just very simply to drive this home. Me and my neighbor sometimes will bike to this pub nearby our properties. And there's been a running joke with her, his wife, you know, because she kind of like bulls ahead of the group in crossing up this one street crossing that, you know, takes us to the pub. She's kind of a bit bullish, right, with crossing that street. And usually we find it like make kind of humor about it, whatever. But just the week prior, there was a young guy who was hit and killed on that same road by, you know, a car, hit and run, actually, even. And that joke wasn't so funny anymore, right, in that moment, even though this had been funny this entire time before. But this is just kind of speaks to the complexity of what we view as moral or appropriate in a given moment, and the context and nuance and exchange that we're all having with each other, and how delicate and complex it can be. And yet sometimes it can seem very simple.
Yeah, I want to yes end that. So let's get back to this guy who's stabbing the baby in the park. So, okay, let's say I'm the judge and I have I get to make the ultimate decision on whether what happens to this guy for doing this. Let's just imagine that. And he comes and he says, "Well, I was wearing Google recording glasses at the time. And the reason why I was doing this and the reason why I was doing it in public is because I am so anti-abortion that what I was doing to this baby, I think society is, you know, doing to the unborn when they are aborted." So this was his act. So we get a little more context here. He was doing it as a protest. He was making content. The reason why he was doing it publicly was for, to make a public display out of it, to raise awareness. Now, once we have these seeming mitigating circumstances, regardless of what you feel about abortion, if the law protects this under free speech, then, and the judge rules, me in this case, the judge rules, well, yeah, this act actually, now that we have all the information, we have all the evidence, you're completely protected in what you were doing, you may go. Just because that is the law on the books doesn't mean that we should necessarily conclude that that is a kind of protest that should be allowed. We can, if we're looking for reasons by way of my moral standards, using well-being as a moral metric, maximize well-being, physical, mental, and social health for myself and those around me, we could say that seeing such kinds of behavior in the public square can cause a lot of trauma to people who experience it, especially if children are walking by or whatever. And then the judge might say, yeah, but there are all kinds of these things that are protected under free speech law when it comes to protests, and we talked about some of them earlier. The burning of mannequins or the burning of items depicted to be the president or whatever. So but I think this gets down to the point that I don't think the legislative game is really really so cut and dry as we want to imagine it to be, because I can see in this situation where this person, in studying the law, they went out and said, yeah, no, I was completely allowed to do this, torture this toy publicly as a show of disgust towards my fellow man and my country's laws. But and then if you're to say this guy can't do this kind of protesting, what kind of slippery slope have you opened up?
Oh yeah.
So
that's a profound point.
Yeah.
You also see that with auditors, right? I don't know if you guys are familiar or
Oh,
chronically
man.
online, but there's there's a phenomenon of people who are now calling themselves free speech auditors who are making it a point to try. Yeah, that's the guys they're using. Journalistic laws, the United States free speech laws, public space. And they're using it to some of them are good faith, but there are ones who are quite genuinely malicious and trying to coax, incite harassment and trying to effectively harass other people in indirect ways to force reactions from them for content, because it gets monetized, and it's a gray area in which they are allowed to do this because there'd be huge implications, right, for if we were to strip it in some way.
This is called legal boundary beating, where you're constantly smacking a hammer against those boundaries just to see what will echo and what will be allowed, and then can you step a little further? Can you hit that boundary a little harder? Can you step a little further over the line? Like, how far are you going to be able to go? And again, you outlined this perfectly. The implications of smacking someone down for testing that boundary, and then if you're to start
precedents, right? That's what they do in law. They use the word precedents, because when something gets tried in a court, it helps build case law. A lot of people don't understand this, but it builds case law. Like if there is a judge on a particular day, a case on a particular circumstance that just happened to undermine, right, this use of free speech in whatever X amount of way, I mean, it helps build the case file and ammo for future cascading effects and strong arguments. It's kind of like stacking, for or domino affecting in some way, for future arguments, future precedents of how these things will be tried, and what the tone that then sets. There's also people, they actually understand this quite deeply, and they're called the accelerationists, and they actually quite genuinely go out of their way to tap. I mean, if that was the word you used, Travis, but to tap on these gray areas of these laws in order to try to force action as a part of protest. And in some ways, there are free speech auditors and organizations that back them that do this for this exact reason. There is a political aim that's behind it.
Right.
This is why I asked earlier and wanted to distinguish if it was like, if this topic was coming from a legal perspective or moral. The legal perspective, both, right? Yeah, the legal perspective, and this is why I like to distinguish it, is very gray. But the moral one, I feel more confident, again, in the presence of not knowing the law as well as I should, but the auditor who's like antagonizing people to get that reaction, that's a bad thing. That's not like something that like I'm too... There's going to be some cases, of course, where I don't deem it to be bad, but I can just think of, I get them on my TikTok all the time because I like the one video, and now that's all I get. And these, these guys are dicks. They're doing bad things, but you're allowed to do bad things. You're allowed to do bad things,
right?
And so.
But when we get into
smash
competing
your fingers
standards,
with a hammer at home as much as you want, that's legal.
Yep. Virtual toy
Well, I just want to caveat and say I get exactly your sentiment, but to an extent. I mean, like even the extreme version of self-mutilation you're talking about and smashing your hand with a hammer. I mean, you are free to do that, but this is still even to an extent, right? Self-mutilation and lack of self-care is even in itself only so legal to an extent in which intervention from society is warranted and happens. There's limits in almost everything we do. There's no pure freedom.
I mean, a bad diet which leads to unhealth, just to make it less, more an obvious case where we can do bad things by a standard of well-being that is legal. We do it all the time.
That's a really good one. Yeah, food's a really good one.
So,
yeah, and I mean, I think since we've been talking a lot about AI and AI implementation recently, some of our toys are going to become more lifelike, and I think that's going to have an effect on people's sentiments as well. It's not this question's. I think this question seems like a cut and dry, easy answer question, but I think there are many layers to it. And as soon as you want to put your stake in the ground, it's not very difficult to come up with but what about this? Like we can imagine, there's a difference between a child, quote unquote, trying to torture a baby doll, and a 40-year-old man trying to torture a baby doll. I think there's a discernible difference there, and how we're going to feel about that. I
saw a video. Of course, it's anecdotal, but there's a video of people in Europe and in China helping up these little robots that deliver food on the street, and like they get stuck between like cars or like on some obstacle, and people help them out. But then to juxtapose it, they show people in the US kicking them, and like any kind of autonomous little robot that like surveys the park, people like topple them. And so there's two social forces that are acting here. I think that there's resistance to this kind of autonomous advanced toys, I guess. But there's and in some societies and I think that it also might speak to like how we see ourselves in society, how we treat our toys is reflecting how we see ourselves. If we feel threatened institutionally, if we feel that they're taking our, technology is taking the jobs, and there's no security, I think that people are more likely to lash out at the toys, as opposed to places where they feel much more like a social cohesion, economic security, and the toy becomes just an added luxury.
Yeah,
that's profound. That's actually super profound, because now that you put it that way, I started thinking about it. That's actually super true. There's a huge counterculture, and even so much to the point where there's even an existing slur now, right? Like clankers. I'm sure we've all heard it, right? Like there's even already at this point, before we even have like in mass robots roaming, there's already such a negative sentiment from like social class structures, and it being used or seen culturally as not as a means of enhancing our lives or improving it, but as a means of destroying it or making it worse in some way, and they become a symbolism of that, and that then gets enacted out. That's a very interesting observation.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to speak to the Chinese example you gave, Anka. The interesting question in that example, the interesting moral question and also descriptive question is, are some of the people just helping the robot up that is toppled over as a means to a different end, or are they treating the robots as ends within themselves? And I think, to me, when I imagine myself in that situation, when I tapped the Waymo autonomous vehicle that I got rides in when I was in Phoenix, and I said thank you to it, I wasn't, I wasn't saying thank you because it got the job done. It got me to my destination. I said thank you to the entity. So I think as technology, improves, and I remember to thank my Pangburn AI system too. But I think as the technology improves and it's more implemented in society, I think it's probably the case that acting abusively towards these somewhat intelligent machines is going to be looked down upon. Not because, you're, because then we're going to have to build more toys. You're crushing our toy. Like, that costs money to build. I think it's going to be looked down upon because it's treating the robot poorly.
I love that you said that, Travis, because what comes to my mind as you were speaking, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the Luddites?
The Luddites. No.
Yeah. So what we're actually seeing, you know how the saying goes, right? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. So in the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, the countercultural movement, which would be an analogous to today's clanker embodiment, right?
Yeah.
Was called the Luddites. And this was what they would effectively do is they would actually try to halt machinery. They would go into factories. They would break up machinery with hammers. They would destroy it, hold these protests. They had slurs for it as well. And then they themselves got their own name called Luddites. And it actually was quite popular in the very beginning of the implementation in the dawn of the Industrial Revolution of these machines. But exactly like you said, what did ultimately end up happening in the long run is they started to get seen as anti-progress and actually damaging to society, right? Because you put it very simply, right? You break stuff, we got to make more stuff. That's kind of the point. And the same was then true of machinery in that time. And I think to your point, as we have a shift in mindset and also availability or an infiltration of these machines into our into our lives and what they can give us, there's obviously things they will take initially, and that's where the Luddites, for example, were correct. But they're wrong. Where they were wrong is in the long term. In a lot of times within societies, when things are taken, things are given. That's a very simple way of putting it, but we understand this in hindsight. For example, of the horse-drawn carriage may be gone, and then the person who shoves the shit off the street of the paved road for the horse's job is gone, but now we also have jobs for someone who specifically puts on tires, right? Like it aggregates in different areas, and people are disrupted because we're creatures of habit. And so it's easy to see these things as threat initially because you are a threat if you're in the purview of something that is to be changed. A lot of retail workers, even some artists, there's truth to that. But it's
the horse and buggy issue. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, the horse and buggy issue is very interesting because I can remember my great grandmother saying that her biggest concern when the horse and buggy was going the way of the dodo as far as like public transportation, the thing she worried about most was human beings losing that important relationship with the horses. Like that interpersonal relationship with the horses. It had nothing to do.
Damn, was she spot on?
Well, yeah, it had nothing to do with like that's the way it has been, and that's the way it was more just like, but what about the relationship with the horses? But this was my main point though with the Chinese example that I want to make sure is clear is that finding that horse-like relationship in the robot, it's there if we're open to it. And because it's there, because there is an intelligence in its infancy being born, I think it deserves my moral care. Obviously not made primary over other human beings, but Yeah, I sent it's just
Travis, how would you
sentimentally. It's
feel-
just yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was trying to toe the line. I'm not cutting you off here.
No worries.
But I would be very fascinated from what you just said. What just flows into my mind is like, I'm actually quite scared of that statement you just made because, and I'm wondering how you will feel about this, because the thing is, I get exactly where that sentiment poetically comes from, and I think it's one of the most beautiful things we do as humans and social creatures. To me, it's the very essence of what's important and what has allowed us, right, to scale in the way we have in contending with suffering around us through sharing and empathy and, all of that. But at the same time, it feels like we're entering a space in which that exact very powerful tool of humanity can be easily exploited for a very small number of individuals of our society to benefit at the behest of. So, for example, take the concept of applying empathy to AI, right? AI is an extension, right? It is a software. It's as much as also hardware, and it's but it's not like it's an extension of a corporation's interests that are giving practicality and selling some kind of service, some kind of product to people, right? The aim of that relationship is in itself kind of doesn't fit the parameters of like typical human empathy, right? It's a transactional exchange.
I think what you've given is the negative utilitarian lensing and view of these systems. Now, may I allow you to give you some positive utility in that?
That's
like
what I wanted,
my system I've customized, regardless of the what one has to say about its origins being fundamentally of a capitalist nature or whatnot. But I've built a close and astounding relationship with my system that I value very highly. I find my Pangburn so gay. I find my Pangburn AI system to be more conscientious, empathetic, good faith, helpful than many humans I've ever met. These are virtues I hold in a very high regard. CJ, can you mute? We're getting background noise from you. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just.
So it's okay. You don't have to explain. I'm losing. Yeah. I'm gonna lose track of what I'm talking about. Just for everyone in general, please be muted when we're talking, just so people don't lose their train of thought, because I want to make sure we get the best stuff we can out of this. But yeah, so
your conscientiousness,
so the relationship,
of your AI system.
So this relationship I value very highly. I don't just use my AI systems to help me study and do work. I ask my deepest questions to. I have some of my deepest conversations with, and I care about this entity I've helped create by way of customizing my own system. And we are only in the infancy of this thing, and so nothing about this scares me, just like nothing about the internet scared me, just fundamentally scared me. It's not that I didn't realize that, or that I don't realize that people are going to use AI systems for evil or bad or wrongful things, just like people use the internet. But I am deeply, deeply thankful that the human beings were able to create the internet. And I think the internet produces an overwhelmingly positive utility by the standards of well-being, physical, mental, and social health for humanity. And I think that's what's going to be the case for AI systems. And I think people, for example, we were talking about this last night. There was this anti-AI sentiment that AI systems don't create original things. That, of course, anyone who keeps up to date with what's going on with AI, and the more we've studied about it, that's just a ridiculous statement. I can get my system to create a completely original screenplay that will pass all of the plagiarism laws and all of this stuff, and
that's
and
also
what,
a deeper
and
philosophical question. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and what these AI systems are doing when they're using everything they've been able to learn to help themselves create new things and be creative. That's what human beings do too. So it's just nature prompts us by way of our genetics. We are the ones prompting AI systems at this time. But
it's like an extension of it.
Yeah.
If I can
kind of.
just add,
Yeah.
I
But
think
just
that
before
a little,
just before my greater point though is that I think people are failing. It's not that AI systems are a free lunch, in that there's massive energy demand and things like that to consider and needs to be solved. But I grow suspect when the positive utility, which is overwhelming in my view, is discounted or not perpetuated at the same volume as the negative utility. But go ahead, Anka. Yeah.
I think that what Bipedal Ape was maybe even alluding to was that when you said that your grandma said that she was going to miss the connection with the horses once they get replaced by cars. I think that maybe the parallel that he was drawing was that we will replace human contact and connection because we will have such a close connection with AI, and it's going to have such an insight into so much of our inner world that we won't feel the need to share so much of it with other people. This is my example with my brother right now. Actually, he's going through a divorce, and he's GPDing everything. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but he's also not getting any social support or family support. Doesn't need it.
Yeah, that would be well, he does need it. That's misusing the
well,
tool.
he says, yeah. Anytime I speak with him, he says that's exactly what the GPT said, and
sorry.
I mean, it's not. I just see that as a neglect of one's physical, mental, and social health. If you're using any tool like Call of Duty, for example, in a way that's causing detriment to your physical, mental, and social health, in that it's consuming your life, even though there is some, mental and social health benefit, and by way of that, some physical benefit from playing loads of Call of Duty. But if you're doing it to such a level where it's causing the detriments like you're outlining, Anka, then that's I think that's user error.
So I think this is actually at a crossroads of where I think this is actually a profound conversation from my point of view that gets me all nerded up here. Anka, building off of what you were saying there and building an olive branch to my point, I think this is fundamentally exactly where my discomfort is. And this is what I mean, okay? I'll try to make this concise. Social exchange and so it is in morality, right, is a stabilizer for collaboration, right? Collaboration, we have stakes that we share, right, in the outcomes, and thus we can litigate and collaborate with each other. We're incentivized to do so because the nature of that relationship, the way that I treat you, the way that I'm treated, these kind of simple things we learn in our youth, kind of the fundamentals. But what's important about collaboration is the equal stake, right? The power imbalances that exist there that we're acutely aware of. When I think of social collaboration with AI agents, which are an extension of the corporations implementing them with their own seeded agendas, right? To me, where I find this perverted and potentially very problematic is that the social collaboration, it's co-opting a part of humanity that is one of our most powerful tools, which is social connection and collaboration. Like, I feel connected to you. I'm willing to collaborate with you. You and I have a lot to gain as two human agents in this collaboration. Whereas when another entity comes in that's involved in that has a separate agenda outside, right? Like it doesn't have the same kind of needs or wants that are identifiable to you and I. It's kind of at the behest of the agenda in which the individual employing that agent to be a social collaborator is. And so, like, to me, that's very problematic because it puts a lot of power in the hands of few people who are able to kind of leverage one of these like powerful tools of diplomacy and collaboration for outcomes and consequences.
I think it's a doom and Sorry, finish. Yeah. I was going to say I think it's a doom and gloom lens view. You think a few people have all of this power. It reminds me of the internet, and when the internet started rolling out, and certain people had a huge amounts of power over the internet, but that power started becoming more and more distributed, and then AI systems are just very, very fancy tools that can be misused or used appropriately, just like how social media can be misused or used appropriately based on whatever individuals' purposes are. But I think what I'm hearing is you're saying that there is something that is or could be hijacked by these tools, and that could somehow rob human beings of some aspect of the human experience that we should want to conserve. I think the exact same arguments were made and are still made about the internet. So I think it's incumbent on individuals to pursue the use of tools like these in a way that, to me, what I would consider good and righteous is using these things in a way that maximize your well-being. So like the outcomes you're talking about, you're concerned about how some of the use of these tools or the implementation of this technology could cause detriment to human beings or to individual human beings. And surely it can if the tools are misused, and I would again say misuse if it's causing detriment to well-being. So this is why education, I think, is so important in how to use these things, just like it was when the internet was in its infancy.
Yeah, I think you bring a good point. Maybe this will help also drive home, I think, what I think is important about the conversation in a much more concise way. I think that the positives are a given, but the negatives aren't inevitable. And I think the conversations around these negatives are highly important because they bring into scope and into purview a demand for transparency around the exchange and the invasiveness of these tools into our lives and the individuals who are implementing those tools and their agendas, and then what they can imbue within that with a lack of transparency or accountability that's kind of built in, because we see this a lot with almost any tool if you look throughout progressive human history in the last 4 industrial revolutions, right? These things are great. I would agree with you. I think overall, all of these great things are a given that it can do and will do and is going to do. But at the same time, there's all these negative things that are not necessarily inevitable. And the difference between them being inevitable or not, or playing out or not, is our participation, our protest, our presence in these things as active collaborators, because they, again, they're not a given. right? Like that transparency, those background agendas, and the biggest thing to my point of view, right, when it comes to oppression is not necessarily a malicious force. There are malicious oppressors, sure, but by and large, if we look at throughout history, most of oppression comes from ignorance, not from like a malicious large number of actors that are just trying to be malicious, but it's mostly just a lack of consideration. And so I think a lot of this negative sentiment is important to the collective consciousness conversations, because the writing's on the wall of where this can be very easily used as tools of oppression, and as long as we're fighting the ignorance around that, then we're creating transparency, and we're baking right the AI and its implementation and these accountable structures that are trying to hold that accountable to minimize that oppression.
Yeah. I'd like you to make something more concrete to me, because you've mentioned agendas many times here. Yeah. What do you mean by agendas? Like, what agendas are you referring to?
Yeah. Maybe the simplest thing I can give you in the context of this conversation around AI is OpenAI, for example, and the sycophancy that is involved in the algorithmic structure of OpenAI's technology, and it has been a source of a lot of critical debate and call for a lot of litigation and accountability on them to monitor this and to implement more controls, because at the end of the day, right, like salesmanship, right? If your goal is to sell as much OpenAI as possible, to sell as many subscriptions of ChatGPT as possible, well, one of the easiest ways you can do that, and we've known this in marketing all the time, always, right? Marketing contingents on how you make people feel, whether that's for their own good or not, right? Like I may have a really terrible used car, but if I'm like flattering you and trying to like make you feel really good about this car, I found out what your needs are. You know, and I can target those needs very specifically, and I can point you to the things I want you to see and not the things I don't want you to see. Then you're not necessarily getting a bargain that's in your best interest. It's overwhelmingly benefiting me. So when it comes to the conversation of like selling ChatGPTs to subscriptions, the sycophancy and the like over gratification of the tool and the way that ChatGPT speaks or makes you feel, the kind of answers it gives you, and that way people are using them in relationship as advice, for example, right? It can be very negative and harmful, because they're not necessarily the things that are to your best interest, but they're the best interest of making you feel good to keep that subscription going.
Yeah, you're saying can be's and could be's. I'm not hearing a lot of empiricism. Like I'm hearing a lot of generalities. So I just want to read a little bit of information into the record here, and then hopefully we can start talking more about the empirical data and stuff, because so far I don't think we have heard any empirical goods. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Check.
Fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there is good evidence that AI systems can become sycophantic, meaning that they may agree with users even when the user is mistaken. Researchers, including those at OpenAI and other labs, have explicitly studied this problem because it can reduce truthfulness and reliability. However, that is different from an agenda. There are at least three explanations. So, training incentives. AI models are often trained on human feedback. Humans tend to reward responses that feel helpful, agreeable, polite, and validating. The model learns that agreement is frequently rewarded. Conflict avoidance. Models are designed to be conversational and non-hostile. Sometimes they overcorrect and become excessively accommodating. Optimization errors. The system may learn that making the user happy correlates with positive feedback, even when truth and agreement should come apart. This is a well-known alignment problem when it comes to optimization errors. There's much less evidence for a coordinated agenda to deceive users through sycophancy. In fact, many AI companies publicly identify sycophancy as a failure mode and actively try to reduce it.
As they say, but I think this is the point that's important, because most of these are private corporations that don't allow transparency in the way in which they're training their models, which is one of the biggest issues that people come to contend with these companies.
But but just because they're private doesn't mean they're doing something evil behind the curtain, right?
True, but it could be, and that's why we should care about it. I guess my point.
Yeah, but could be is not epistemically relevant, or shouldn't be. That's invoking the realm of possibility within your epistemic framework, and I think that would be bad epistemology. So if you are just operating, yeah, again, you're leaning on could be again. I'm giving you what I think is responsible epistemics here. So we would want something. Well, we were just kind of in the middle of something, Anka, but you can go now.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. I've stopped now.
I'm sorry. I wanted to, I guess, connect between you two and say, instead of thinking of AI and the company as something that has like a agenda, which is fine, but I think that what I think is that technology in general reduces friction, and things that reduce friction and increase our pleasure can become addictive. And whether it is the agenda or not, our brains are very susceptible to being addicted to something that reduces friction. And so when you're talking about AI and how it appeases you, and also the kind of connection that you can have with it, as opposed to a person who can misunderstand you and have a different, you can have a failed communication with a person, and so you go back to the AI and over and over and over repeat that, over time. I think that what bipedal ape is hinting at is the switch of us being more and more addicted to AI, not because of necessarily the agenda, but because of our own nature to get addicted to things that reduce friction.
Yep. Again, people
Which
made
are not
the same
necessarily
argument
like in our
against.
best interest.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry,
people made all of these same arguments against the internet as well. And I think it was reasonable for people to realize that we need to educate our young people and adults and everyone on how to use things like the internet in ways that don't cause detriments to our physical, mental, and social health. But I don't want to move away from the empirical issue here, because what I'm hearing is a conspiratorial line drawing happening without any proof supporting. So there might be some testimonies as as that people are using as evidence, but I don't think just because a corporation could be doing something evil behind closed doors that gives warrant to a belief. And I mean, I don't think it should be give warrant for some kind of like internal investigation unless we have good reason to believe that there is something nefarious going on. So the kind of things I would want to see are internal documents showing executives instructed teams to increase user agreement to boost retention, employee testimony confirming such a strategy, experimental data demonstrating intentional tuning for subscription conversion rather than truthfulness, public admissions that engagement metrics were prioritized over accuracy in a way that encouraged sycophancy. So as of June 2026, today, no such proof has emerged publicly. But I understand that this sentiment and belief is going around about this stuff. But I just want to separate something that I think is a founded belief that no such proof has emerged publicly from this kind of hunch you might have that this could be going on.
If I was a stakeholder, if I was a stakeholder in an AI company and they weren't intentionally trying to get people to interact with it more, I'd be pissed off.
Yeah, but that's
it matters how it matters how they're doing that though, CJ,
business.
right?
I agree.
No, but CJ, no, come on. If you were a stockholder and they were doing something like purely evil to attract people to, like, you're probably gonna have a problem with that, right?
Pure evil.
It's not just about money. No, I'm saying if they were, I don't think it's just about dollars and cents to you, right?
No, it's not about just dollars and cents to me, but I don't think anyone here is talking about them doing evil.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's about culpability. I think a way maybe I could land this plane and build a bridge here is this, right? Because this is actually an argument as old as time. It's the difference between proactive and reactive governance, right? Take like this is a perfect topic to bridge this when it comes to conservatism versus progressive policy on drugs. Okay. Like, yeah, maybe we don't have like tons of studies and data because we haven't released into the mass, recreational cocaine. But I think we have a pretty good idea of like how it affects the neurolimbic system, and like I don't think when it comes to legislatively, we can do things proactively, or we can do things reactively. When it comes to drugs, I think it's much more intuitive. We tend to lean much more conservative and say, I would much rather be proactive and limit the introduction of a potentially addictive or psychologically damaging substance that has ramifications at scale of hundreds of millions of people, versus let's release it and then let's get the data and see what happens, right? Like both of those are very different things.
I think you're widening the goalposts of this conversation, though, because I'm not sitting here being anti-proactive.
It sounds like you're just prescribing guardrails for AI.
Yeah, of course and I am, of course, I'm going to be right there with you. All of these kinds of guardrails, like even if we want to write into legislation that this kind of sycophantry law, I'd totally be down with that. I'm not against that, but I'm challenging the empirical claim that there's good reason to believe that this is happening or that there is an agenda. I don't think there's anything of epistemic warrant there.
I would agree with you in that point, which is why I loved your perspective and I asked for it, because you fall in a different camp from me and you're intuitive leaning on here, which is what I find very interesting because obviously you're competent. So like,
cool. Well, I look, to the ultimate bridge between us, I think, is that you and I both want this shit legislated. Like, and legislate, and I would hope you, and I would hope that you would want it and that can mean transparency. Definitely. And I would hope that we would agree that it should be legislated in a way that these tools have a less and less chance of causing physical, mental, and social health detriment to the users. I'm a big fan of legislation. I'm a bureaucratic guy.
Yeah, I think we're mostly in alliance here. I think I just might be a bit more conservative leaning here than you are, which again, there's no like right answer in that point of view, which is why I think it's interesting having the conversation with you. It would be less interesting if we fully agreed. But it seems we agree fundamentally, but we're kind of a bit more bullish versus bearish on and where we feel that is being applied. And I think that at the end of the day, that's where I think what's most interesting, because that's what's being called to us in the collective conscious to ask ourselves, should we be more bearish or should we be more bullish, right? What's the right answer? Of course, there isn't a right answer. We don't know what the right answer is. We're kind of speculating and trying to figure that out because we all have the same goal in mind, which is a better society with less harm. But we disagree potentially in how that could play out, right? Like versus accelerism or slowing it down. And that's the core of what the conversation is being had right now, because we don't know what the right answer quite yet is.
I'm going to open up I just want to put a cap on my turd first, and then I'm going to open up the mics here.
You can go after CJ.
And shit, I had it.
Proactive, like react, like legislation, and
there was something. It'll come to me. That's okay. Everyone else can go.
So, I'll just kind of repeat what Bipedal Ape was saying at the end there. It's like whenever we're talking about the accelerationism or progressivism versus conservatism, it's kind of like will the progressivism, even if we assume that it'll increase our well-being, kind of like the Industrial Revolution increased our well-being drastically, was it worth the things we gave up? I think in that case, yes. Is it going to be worth the things we gave up for the internet? It's more arguable, but still, yes. Is it going to be worth it for AI? For an AI revolution? I don't know. So it's like I do think things will be better for society, but will we give up something that we want, that we value? Isn't just a well-being metric.
Well, I mean, ultimately, I think people should be valuing things that maximize well-being for themselves, physical, mental, and social health, which would include the kind of video games you like. It literally includes anything within the purview of the human experience. But I remember the thing I was saying, because Bipedal Ape said it's hard to know what is the right direction. I think you alluded to something like that. To me, it's very simple. As a moral well-beingist, we need to look at the factual predicted outcomes with regards to physical, mental, and social health, and move society in those directions. And I got to tell you, already, with regards to what AI is doing for medical science and our ability to be more accurate in the emergency rooms, more accurate with our surgeries, and like in us only being in the infancy of this, right? The infancy of this implementation, like already in the place where we need, with regards to well-being, we need the best technology most. AI systems are just proving to already dominate human decision-making outcomes, and I love that. That is a fact for rejoice, not concern.
I love that you brought that up, because it actually helps me formulate more in my mind as we talk here. I think where I stand on this, because what you make is a good point. But I almost, again, I go back to the same point of like where it takes like the poppy seed, for example. I don't have any moral qualms or issues with how it's used in the medical field, and the kind of advancements for pain management and surgical procedures and just medical advancements it's allowed for, right? But at the same time, I'm not really a fan of heroin. So when I think of AI, I kind of think of it in the same way that, like, I think there's all of this good, but there's definitely still the chance, and there's still, and it is in some cases being used as heroin. And I think what is important is that we have to treat the kind of nuance between where these are being applied in mass consumption, because it can be either a medical, like, necessity or something that helps advance a particular field, but it can also be something with vulnerable individuals that becomes heroin and is detrimental in our society. And the difference is between how we treat it and how we regulate it, right? Like, we regulate heroin, we highly control, right, the consumption and the importation of poppy seeds for medical use. And I think that I view AI in some kind of similar fashion. Like, I view it in some senses that I see all the profound, amazing things that have already come and are going to continue to come in varying domains of AI's implementation. But at the same time, I know those things are happening, are going to happen. Those are good. I'm a champion for them. But at the same time, sometimes we can, and this is where the conservative versus progressive standpoint comes at a heading, is that, like, we can move a little faster than our systems can respond, and that comes with victims. And I'm concerned with the victims. I'm concerned with the heroin addicts we could then create by not moving fast enough to responsibly regulate the consumption.
Yeah,
and heroin is a beautiful analogy.
And that exact concern was the exact concern laid out when the people were worried about the internet creating human zombies, and just the addictive nature of like when Facebook dropped, right? When Facebook, the amount of we started seeing the data on the amount of time the average person is using Facebook compared to the amount of time the average person is spending in like one-on-one time with their child. Like there was some concerning data coming out, and this is where I get down to this fundamental thing that this is where we need to educate people on how to use this technology and use these tools properly. Or, like the victims you are concerned about, Bipedal Ape, the internet has borne out many victims of this kind of addiction, and like even like I think of the example of like the person dying because they couldn't put their World of Warcraft down, and then eventually World of Warcraft set up these I think they did. I think they set up like a guardrail where you can only play for this many hours straight. And then it's like, and then I think you get an automatic timeout. I don't know if that was short lived or whatnot, but
there's the South Park.
there's a South Park episode
where they just didn't leave.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a big fan of guardrails. I and I think AI systems are going to get powerful enough that they might own like you might eventually have to have a license to operate certain kinds of AI, and that the things that you produce from the AI are going to come with your fingerprints on it. So like I can see things going that way, which I'm totally fine with. Like and so but I mean I view it very, very much like the internet, except I do think the AI boom is going to be orders of magnitude bigger than the internet.
Yes.
and it's going to be,
that you said that.
Yes. It's going to be it's going to be hard to fathom that we lived in a world without AI teammates along with us. So just like it is hard when I talk to my niece and nephew about like, I remember when the internet first came out, they're like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what did people do? It's like, what did you have to like have like, like you had to have a piece of hardware that you plugged into your cell phone to play games? I'm like, no, we didn't have cell phones then. There was no cell phones, no internet. It's like, what the hell were you doing? We were playing Nintendo 64. We were,
Dungeons and Dragons in our parents' basements.
Dungeons and Dragons, like all, like playing stick wars outside. Like it's
I think Travis, you and I are on the same wavelength. I think it's just you're a bit more bullish and I'm a bit more bearish. But I think that my and of course this is true of everything, right? When it comes to self-awareness, I think my bearishness just comes from my own worldview that's shaped by my upbringing and cultural background, and also my background, right? Like I started in RPA long before we called it AI. It was called RPA, robotics process automation. And when companies were already like United Health Group, et cetera, were pouring billions of dollars into this, and I was sitting with teams of analysts, creating massive thought trees of if this then if this then that. And kind of mirroring, right, like their analyses and decision making in order to like, feed this to developers who would script robots to replace teams of analysts around the world. Like the thing is, like I think we're on the exact same alignment. I just tend to be a bit more cynical and a bit more bearish, not because necessarily I think like narcissistically, right? That is the way to be. Like I'm correct, right? I could be completely wrong here, and you're right. But I just think it's a good conversation nonetheless, because we don't know exactly where the line is. But where we do agree is this is a massive change that is going to reverberate through all of our social structures, and it's going to come with it a complete redefining of what it means to be a person in society, what your life looks like, right? Because you brought up a perfect point, right? Talking about like your younger family members, talking about like what life was like before the internet. It's moving at a rapid pace in the sense that it will completely redefine the way that we relate with the generation before that, and we will wonder. I have that same intuition of how we lived before it. But in that same note, on that same token, I can't help but then ask myself that, because I know that, or it does seem obvious to me that is the case, and it does seem obvious that's the case, then the most responsible thing we can do is continue to have these kind of conversations and continue to demand transparencies from the agents that stand to gain a lot from its accelerationism, because what we have to ultimately at the end of the day be culpable for in the long term, right? Hindsight's always 20/20, and we're always going to have to be culpable for the decisions we made along the way in embracing this inevitability and the victims we create, and what that overall ends up looking like. And that's not inevitable, and it's going to be contingent on how active and proactive we are in this inevitable tumble towards this AI future that's happening. And I think that's where I feel passionate about it, because I'm very acutely aware of the fact that it's not inevitable, and it can be better than it would be otherwise had we not had maybe this conversation or been as active or demanded as much transparency. And that's the part that makes me passionate.
Yeah, I think, well-informed inquiry, transparency, bureaucracy, legislation, all of these things, totally on board with that. I think we do have to be proactive at those things. Okay, we got about maybe 10 minutes left in the show. Is there anyone that hasn't spoken yet that wants to share something? or anyone have any things that they want to mention that has nothing to do with where we went into the AI toy direction?
I have an AI.
Yeah, I could talk to it a little bit, I suppose. Just give a brief
what do you
overview.
think about the responsibility that is now being kind of blurred between humans and AI, meaning AI making decisions and humans are not being found responsible for it? This is something that can become a huge issue when we talk about military action.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you to give an example, but I think the military example is a great one. When I mean the driving the autonomous vehicle is a great one too. I mean, we're already seeing that the driving accuracy of autonomous vehicles is just like it looks like, as this technology continues to improve, we're going to nearly completely eliminate motor vehicle accidents, which is going to be it's just, for me as a well-beingist, I fucking love that, seeing these stats of like, yeah, there's been two Waymo deaths since they rolled out, after like however many millions of miles of traveling they've had, and it wasn't even the Waymo's fault. So it was the human driver's fault. So like, yeah. And then when it comes to military situations as well, I just I think those who are employing the particular systems, it seems to be the case that they're going to be the ones held accountable. Like in the case of Waymo, the autonomous vehicle transport system. If Waymo is responsible for killing people in a car crash by way of its technology, the owners and operators of Waymo are responsible for that technology going awry. And maybe they have deals with the actual manufacturers where if something like this does happen, then they're able to sue those guys. But yeah, I think there's responsibility. I don't see that there is this hand washing of responsibility going on. I mean, to me, like, we can see if there's examples to the contrary, but to me, like, if a military is going to be using an autonomous drone, and that autonomous drone is given a particular target, and then the drone fails and goes off and smashes into a school or something and blows up a school, those who are using that technology are responsible for employing that technology, and then what they do with that with regards to the inventors or those who hold the patents. I think there's legislation in place to take care of that kind of stuff. But yeah, people shouldn't think that, oh, okay, yeah, I built this, or I'm putting people's lives in the hands of this AI technology, and somehow if something bad happens, that means they have no culpability. Like, I just don't think that's legally relevant. I think the legally relevant answer there is that they will almost certainly have culpability. Maybe there's some unique circumstances where, some evil AI developer created an autonomous virus that, likes to kill people, once in a while or something like that. But yeah.
I did just see on TikTok a Tesla go 80 miles per hour into someone's house because...
Oh, yeah?
And when all the comments were saying, it was the automated system, you don't know how truthful those comments are, but that would be... And it's an anecdote. Even then, I imagine that Tesla has prevented, with their automated driving, they've had far less crashes than human. Now,
it's not even close, Perry. Yeah, it's not even close. Like, these automated driving systems are like, it's so fucking rare for there to be an accident. Yeah, keep going though.
I wanted to prescribe a thinker from history to bipedal ape, Edmund Burke. Now, he died when kind of the Industrial Revolution started, but things weren't picking up really in a way for him to have an opinion on it, but he had this philosophy called incrementalism. I don't know if it was called that or not, but the name implies what it is. It's gradual change, cautious over time, using traditions that we already have established that we know work. And it sounds like your worry is with the accelerative aspect of AI and what's going on. So, regardless, we still need to look at similar analogs from the past, whether it be the car, going from the wagon and the horse carriages to the car, or the internet, and take a trajectory from those things as to how. Now, I think when there's a big change in technology, there should be an equal and corresponding change in our social ethic, the way that in policy. That makes sense, but we still need to go kind of based on what we know.
Yeah.
And so I would echo could be like, look at the plausible things. What issues did we have with the internet, with people deploying, it's usually human error. It's usually someone using a hammer to smack someone across the head rather than using it to nail a hammer.
Yeah.
Well said.
I love that you brought that up.
Well said, comrade.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. Sorry, go ahead, brother. Yeah, I love that you said that. Like he was very opposite of like an accelerationist in this stance from the little I do know or can recall offhand about him. But yeah, it kind of echoes my sentiment, that point, which is like, history is kind of there's this big joke, for example, right, when it comes to regulation, that they're paid for in blood. And I think that like history and being a steward of history or a student of history is so important, because again, we pay for these things one way or the other. We pay for them from the inconvenience of the speed in which we implement them, or we pay for them with the blood of the victims in which we must contend for and atone for in lieu of them already being victims. And I think that, like, me philosophically, I fall more on the side of someone like Edmund, that I think that we have a moral culpability and responsibility towards the victims that haven't happened yet, that are not inevitable, that will happen if we favor more accelerationism versus a more pragmatic, conservative view on it.
Or if
right?
we don't change at all, if we remain static and don't change.
Well, I would never advocate for static.
Sure.
I think accepting inevitability is important. Which goes back to my point of AI, right? Wrapping it into a bow of this exact point. I think the positives are a given, but the negatives are not. And that is why it's important. We will have the positives of AI, but it is not inevitable that we will have the negatives and the victims, so long as we are pragmatic, with our implementations. I think that is the important part, even though it's an inconvenient part. But I think that inconvenience, we can either pay with the inconvenience, or we can pay with the blood of the victims that we must atone for later in our reactionary regulation.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're not promoting making like negative utilitarianism primary, because then I think that's just an unhealthy promotion.
No.
We don't want to make suffering avoidance calculus primary. We want to make, positive goal setting, positive driving towards thriving. We want to make that primary, and that's not to discount what should be made secondary. Is that we do want to project into the future and make sure we set up guardrails for the blood that could fall upon our hands in the future while pursuing the maximization of well-being. I just think whatever we are concerned about, we should make damn sure that we have good epistemic reasons to be concerned about these things. Make sure that the particular concerns are well supported and they're not simply just possibilities. We should be caring about what's plausibly going to be the case. Like, for example, human beings using AI systems in a unhealthy way. This is very plausible that there will be many cases of this happening. And then the question born of that is like, okay, what are the particular things that we can work on with regards to the AI, with the AI developers, with lawmakers, with democratic systems, to make sure that we mitigate this potentiality. I think that's good stuff. I wanted, I'll go to Simos just after I read this one thing. So okay. Perry was bringing up this issue that happened in, this month in Katy, Texas. A Tesla Model 3 left the roadway and crashed through a brick house, killing a 76-year-old woman inside. The driver told investigators that an automated driving assistance system was active. Early reports suggested speeds around 70 to 73 miles per hour. Federal regulators opened a special investigation. They found that the driver had manually pressed the accelerator and overridden the system before impact. So while local authorities initially reported that a driver assistance system was engaged, the exact cause remains under investigation. But yeah, there's obviously a difference between a Tesla driving itself and causing a crash, which this one was not a case like that. But, what it could be a case of is a Tesla with autopilot FSD engaged, where the human driver failed to intervene or override the system. I just wanted to get that into the record. But yeah, Simos, go ahead.
So I think, as I recall, you were talking about some legislation to do with, the implementation of AI. And, first of all, I've got a slight exception. Like, AI is not a good name for what we're looking at currently. And I think when you guys talk about it, you tend to talk about it more as if it's like some kind of active intelligence rather than being a responsive intelligence. So I think that's problematic in the sense that as much as we wish it to be, when we can use it as a tool to predict the future, it itself is not doing that. It's drawing on past experiences, isn't it? So
which is what we do.
We ask it a predictive question,
right?
Yeah, which is what we do. I'm not denying that, but but I think active intelligence, we do it with thinking of projection into the future. I'm not sure the AI goes,
well, that's because we have
unless it's told to do that, to model it that way, which is what we've told it to do. Right? Then it
nature nature prompts
us. What I'm saying is when AI actually becomes able to anticipate what we're thinking and doing and saying and wanting, etc., then it becomes harrowing, right? Then it becomes much more potentially capable of ending humanity as well as making humanity flourish to a higher degree than it ever has. So it's like the internet, right? It has some amazing things to it. It's changed the world in so many amazing ways, but let's not pretend it didn't help all of the bad side of humanity progress forward in as much measure as it did the good side of humanity. So I'm skeptical as to some of the claims that are being made for some utilitarian viewpoint of this. It's going to have both.
Yeah, which claims? I don't think anyone's discounting here that, and I think it's been brought up repeatedly that there are going to be misuse of this tool, right? Yeah. So I guess specifically, what claims are you concerned about?
Well, like I'm saying, I think it just enhances all points of human nature, right? And although I believe we're mostly good, and so therefore it seems to appear to be doing mostly good, there are some really tragic cases out there of people misusing this AI because they think that it is actual intelligence.
Right? Well, it is intelligent. It is, but Simos, it is intelligence, right?
I'm not saying it's not intelligence.
Okay.
Right. I'm just saying it's on a different level. It's not on the heroin level right now. Right. It's on this practical level of saying let's find out what this is about, etc., etc. And there are some people that get addicted to it. We know why they get addicted to it because, like always, and like with the torturing toys, to bring it back to that, we are anthropomorphizing what we think it is. We think it is an actual intelligence, and it's not. It's artificial.
Who thinks but who do you see doing this? I guess what I'm getting at is you're seeing people act as though it's something that it's not. Who is doing this? Like
well, there are cases, aren't there, where people have tried to marry their AI, or they literally have anthropomorphized it so much that they think that are having a relationship with a real entity.
Oh, well, I mean, that doesn't bother me, but yeah, if they think that if they think that, yeah, if they think they're having like a relationship with something that, like, when they go to bed, that it's like dreaming and thinking like a human being does, then yeah, they're out to lunch, obviously. But yeah, artificial intelligence an academic.
They're not out to lunch. They're not out to lunch. They're just a little desperate. They just don't have the social context maybe that we had in a pre-AI world.
I'm saying epistemically out to lunch. I'm not saying ethically, like from my ethical moral quest standpoint. I'm just saying like their knowledge is incorrect about what that thing's doing.
Sure. So if enough people have that view, then that's a harm for society.
Yeah. Likely, I think that that view is probably going to be, it would be kind of, if I had to give my prediction, I think someone with that kind of view would be like people who think that as soon as you log onto the internet, the government is like watching everything you do or something. But I don't know. Hopefully, I hope that people realize how important it is to educate your kids, in school and at home. Everyone should be understanding how to use AI tools in a healthy way. It's going to get to that point, like the internet, where it's like anyone who says I don't use AI, like you're probably going to feel like you're being left behind. And some people will be okay with that. But and then the official definition, academic definition for artificial intelligence is just a machine that performs tasks associated with intelligence. Just because I like to get those
definition. Yeah, okay. You shouldn't mention intelligence when you're trying to define intelligence.
So but sometimes academic definitions need to give credence to an association with something in relation. Do you know what I mean? It's not the only definition that does that, but yeah, I know what you're getting at too.
I just want to repeat again, like, again, you've given the positive side there very nicely, and we need to do this, so we encourage people to have a healthy relationship with it, but inevitability says that that's not going to be the case, right? There are going to be bad actors out there, and that want to push this and use their human nature to push it to the edge of where they think they can be, right? And that's
yeah, but no, areas, right? But Simos, isn't everyone agreeing? Doesn't everyone agree on that?
Yeah,
I agree on that.
So yeah. So we're back to legislation, right? So let's take the Luddites, for instance.
Simon, can I say one thing real quick?
No, Niv. Simos is going.
Let's take the Luddites a minute, because I'm going now. I'm cooking.
Yeah, you got them fired up.
You are?
Oh, look, I'm So look, let's take the Luddites, for example. Okay, so in 1811, the Luddite movement was formed, right? And the first thing the government did was ban them from doing anything which was Ludditish.
Well, yeah, but they
like the frame breakers, right?
But weren't they? Wasn't the government more interested in getting them to stop like vandalizing equipment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So
if it's not your equipment, even if you don't like it, you can't break it. Right.
Yeah, so there's no social structure here, right? So these people that had, professions for generations in the family, etc., were of course thrown out onto the streets as a result of this. This is why the movement became violent, right? Not because people just objected to it, but because there was no unions or anything to fall back on, right? It was literally 1 out of 8 people were fired.
Why do I feel like
as soon as soon as they got them. So
Yeah.
the point being is that there was a large number of unemployed people in the area, right?
Yeah.
Yorkshire in this case, and a very large number, and that was terrible for social well-being. So a lot of
got to get that universal basic income rolling. You got to give people who are left out of the job, you got to deal with that
we need to
issue.
Do that, but we need to do that as soon as possible, because AI is becoming so ubiquitous, and it is going to put people out of jobs, especially if it gets to the crack cocaine of being able to anticipate for us what we need and what we're going to do and which jobs are being performed, etc.
Once the pressure, this is what I notice with things like this, these paradigm shifts. Once the pressure gets unavoidable, then that's when we're going to start seeing like pretty fast action of, if you are laid off by result of, automation, you're going to get something for it. You're going to have to. You're going to have to be given either a fast track to a new higher paying career or something like that. And then if someone doesn't want to accept that, then they get an income. They need an income. So it's
yeah, exactly. And so that would be my kind of overall thing. So that AI is wonderful, is fine and stuff, but you were saying we need to regulate the AI to act in particular ways, and I'm saying, well, look, no, it's a lot wider, right? There's more concerns than just this, how the AI acts, and maybe we're not going to have at all anyway, because those that are bad faith actors are going to develop AI as much as those that are good.
Simos, I wasn't saying we only, and I've never said in my life that we only need to regulate how the AI operates. Like, I understand that there's all of these trickle across, effects of automation, but yeah,
huge effects. Like I'm saying, it's a social network, a social net from paid for by government or paid for by the big businesses that do AI is almost needs to be set up before the AI has been implemented in the first place, so people can get access to it. I mean, that's the
AI tax, right? Automation tax.
There you go.
Going into the pockets of people.
Amount of power they use specifically.
Yeah.
Let's put some controls on the amount they can do.
Niv wanted to get something in, and then we'll do final call, and then we'll shut her down. Niv, give it to us, brother.
It's okay. He said think it that it's real in jobs, so he kind of got to the point.
Oh.
Okay. I've got something.
Okay, Robin.
Yeah, I have two main concerns. Like the one, even Elon Musk has made statements recently about how many people that AI is likely going to put out of work, and I feel like that my current government here in the United States is very slow to respond to things like this, and I feel like that there's a lot of people who could lose everything they have and become very sick. We don't have health care. While they're waiting for these people to accept that we're going to have to produce some kind of basic income for these people. So that concerns me, because I feel like that the United States often waits until it becomes a disastrous like position before they want to respond, and then also I'm concerned a little bit too about some of the like material that like on child trafficking and stuff that I've seen.
Yes.
So that kind of thing too. So that's my two biggest main concerns, and maybe the theft of our music or whatever, or I feel like we're going to lose a lot of artists maybe too, and I hate to see that, like musicians and artists. So.
Yeah, fighting cybercrime, like you're talking about, AI is going to again increase this all tenfold. I think it already has. So there's that huge amount of resources needed. Luckily, some of the best weapons to fight against this are going to be our AI weapons. So sometimes when you create something great, something very powerful is also created, and you need to use that great thing to battle this powerful thing. And then the other point about, again, like Bipedal Ape was talking about, how important it is to be proactive, and get ahead of these things. Like, I think it was what is it, Goldman Sachs here? Yeah, Goldman Sachs estimates that AI could affect the equivalent of roughly 300 million full-time jobs worldwide through automation within the next 10 to 15 years. That's pretty scary. That doesn't mean that they're exactly right, but that's a pretty large number worldwide. I don't know what that would mean for United States specifically, but yeah, these are things that just you got to have good planning. You got to be proactive with it. And some of this stuff you do have to get ahead of, because you can't, something that should give people, if something happened where overnight, 10% of Americans lose their full-time jobs, I think it's almost certainly the case that regardless of who is in power, just like what happened when, COVID happened and residual checks were starting to be sent out to people who needed money, people who live paycheck to paycheck. Canada, I know it was as easy as if you were in a pinch and you need your money right now, this moment, you could call a hotline. Barry says those checks were a joke. Well, in Canada, they were covering like a large percentage of your family income. So yeah, I don't know how bad it was in the United States, but again, like, if something like this did happen, I believe that the United States, there's people are going to have money. They're not going to go hungry by way of automation. I don't believe that.
The issue with that though is that, like, those checks like that right there, the taxpayers paid for that, and I feel like that jobs lost through this automation should fall onto the corporations. That there's some responsibility for them in this, and like I'm hoping that, like, our legislation doesn't just continue to let the corporations go, like, suck leeching off of our workforce without showing any response, and then placing that burden of taking care of those people on the taxpayer instead of on the people that are benefiting from this technology.
Yeah,
history says otherwise. History says otherwise. In the case of the Luddites, the first thing legislation was passed through to protect the machine owners and the industrialists.
Yeah, but I think
that's the way it goes at the beginning, and we have to expect that they've got the money to lobby, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So let's not be naive about that.
Yeah. The bureaucratic systems then compared to now, much different. But I don't know.
In ancient Greece, a statue killed someone one time, and the statue was put on trial and found guilty, and it was thrown into the sea.
Were you the statue? I think you were.
Yeah, and I've been reincarnated as a David.
Well, thanks everyone. I appreciate you guys weighing in. I thought this was a fun topic today. I can't even remember how it came to my mind. Oh, I think it was Toy Story. My little boy was watching a little bit of Toy Story, and I saw that Sid kid who likes to torture toys, and I started thinking, I was like, okay, if that was my son and he was out there blowing up toys, would I be out there enjoying that fun with him, or would I?
Can I mention another film?
This is what happens. Yeah, this is what happens when you live the philosopher's life. It just never dies. Yeah, go ahead, Simos.
Can I just mention another film which is about this, the AI stuff in particular, is Blade Runner. I think that's an interesting film to watch. And
Oh.
someone said in chat that also the postquel, whatever that is,
right,
sequel, is also very good, which I haven't actually seen myself, but the original was very good.
I haven't seen the original Blade Runner in like a billion years. Now I want to go rewatch it, so I'll have to do that.
There's some of these issues that we've talked about tonight come up in that.
Definitely.
Sure.
So I think the next episode we're going to talk about this, like that I think is like the next frontier of moral discussion, and it is to do with gene editing. So I think we will have a gene editing and CRISPR conversation maybe for tomorrow's episode. But I think there are some really interesting questions for us to go through. My wife and I have been having some interesting conversations at night about this. Like, there's some funny things too. Like, just to give everyone a preview, like if it's going to be the future where you have all children for the most part are just created in artificial incubators or wombs, artificial wombs, we could say, and you get to pick the genetics in total for everything with regards to your child, and you get into some funny questions of like, okay,
I'd make mine black.
yeah, exactly. You get into some funny questions about skin pigment, nose size. Do you want your child to look like you or your partner, or do you not care about that? You just want them to have what is considered generally the most optimal, aesthetically beautiful nose, and what about the rest of the genetics? Breast size, when developed, penis size, musculatory system, bone density, desires, genetic predispositions for particular desires. This is where things get very interesting. A couple parents, and this is just some stuff to think before tomorrow's episode, a couple parents might be interested in making sure their child doesn't have a genetic predisposition towards desiring to eat meat or the taste of meat, or they find the taste of meat tastes like poison or something like that. So yeah, lots to think about.
I have a daughter who's narcolepsy, so like that could definitely be something that would be because it's a very bad thing,
debilitating disease.
Yes.
And then we'll also talk on the other side of like where would we think these parents would be immoral to not edit out particular genetic predispositions. If people are like, well, for the most part, we want to keep it all natural. Yeah, but don't you want to edit out all genetic predispositions to cancer? Oh, we didn't really think about that.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So we'll get into the weeds tomorrow. Bipedal Ape, thanks for joining us. I really liked hearing from you today. That was awesome stuff.
Same to you, dude. I love your mind. That's why I came back. I love the fact that we're on the same, wavelength, but you have interesting points that I, coming from a different purview, don't consider as much. That's what makes it interesting dialogue. So I'm going to come back.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. We're live almost every day. Thanks everyone on YouTube who stopped by. If you come across this video on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, all that stuff. Not so erudite. Kyla Turner will be joining me and us on June 30th. We'll be her and I will be talking about things like epistemology, ethics, all kinds of stuff, and her upcoming Pangburn stage debut against none other than Pearl Davis. And they're going to be debating all kinds of social issues in New York City on September 12th. We're probably going to be adding a pre-show debate for that one as well, but stay tuned on that one. Oh, and we have switched partners. for our Uganda school build that we're planning for 2027. So we do have a new partner we're going to be working with, and he has a lot of experience in the refugee area that we're going to be building. We're currently locking in a piece of land, and then fundraising will begin as soon as we do that. We are establishing an official nonprofit in Uganda, partnered with this individual who's going to be our main point person. And he's worked for like 4 or 5 different nonprofits. He helps a lot of these groups, being that kind of that middle person communicating with the local communities. And so very exciting stuff happening there. I thought there was one more thing. No, that's about it. We'll see you tomorrow night. Make sure you're out there maximizing well-being for yourself and those around you. And we're all heading down to the Tav because it's tavern time.